This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Thursday, December 19th, 2024, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. Coming up in our closing markets, I will be joined by Cory Bratland of agmarket.net. But first, it is time for the latest edition of Between the Pods. I'm joined by Grant Kimberley of the Iowa Soybean Association as we talk about his recent trip to the Philippines and South Korea.
It's time to go between the pods with the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and the Iowa Soybean Association. For the next year, we will explore the ways Iowa-grown soybeans are making a difference at home and around the world. Now, here's your host of Between the Pods, Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Grant Kimberley. He's with the Iowa Soybean Association, and Grant was recently on a trip to Asia that we're going to learn all about. But Grant, before we get into that, could you tell us, please, your job within the ISA?
So I'm the Senior Director of Market Development for the Iowa Soybean Association. I oversee all of our demand programs, working as the lead staff person that staffs our demand committee, international marketing, exports, biofuels, livestock initiatives, both domestic and international. All those areas is where I work in.
And Grant, you recently had a chance to go on a trip to the Philippines and South Korea on a trade mission trip, and the Philippines, a big part of where soybeans from the United States end up, but usually end up in the form of soybean meal. Could you tell us, please, why is the Philippines such a big destination for soybean meal?
That's right. You know, when we export out of this country, we export whole soybeans sometimes, and then whole, as in addition to whole soybeans, soybean meal and soybean oil. And there's different markets for these different products. And the Philippines and Southeast Asia in particular is a great market for our soybean meal. Iowa's a large soybean processor. We produce a lot of soybean meal here. And so it's great to have these markets like the Philippines, which is a huge market for us.
And they are then using that soybean meal to feed their livestock. Which livestock industries is that mostly going towards?
You know, in the Philippines, the pork industry is the biggest industry, livestock market. They have been hurt a little bit with African swine fever, so it's taken their industry down a little bit. They're working their way back on that. But also the poultry market is very important, eggs, broilers, those kinds of things. And also an interesting tidbit is that rooster cockfighting is a legal sport, very popular over there, and that's a growing market too for their farmers, and it is a lot of soybean meal demand. And then lastly, aquaculture is an important market for us in Southeast Asia and the Philippines.
And Grant, I know that the Philippines as well, also a country that has a very large population. So when we talk about some of these numbers that go into how much soybean meal actually ends up in the Philippines, it gets to be pretty substantial, doesn't it?
It sure does. The Philippines is a population of around 110 to 120 million people, and they are growing fast. About 60% of their population is under the age of 35, and they're adding about 1 to 1.5 million people per year to that, and they're adding, their incomes continue to go up. When people have more disposable income, they eat better, more protein, and this market continues to grow for us. And they really value U.S. soybean meal, and they have a preference for that because of the quality, the sustainability, the consistency of our products.
How does the U.S. soybean farmer relationship also factor into that? I know that the two countries have been working together for quite some time.
That's right. We've been working in the Philippines for the last 20 or so years through our U.S. Soybean Export Council partners and various state soybean associations, and then also, in particular, Ag Processing Incorporated, AGP, which is the largest farmer-owned processor in the United States. They process a lot of soybeans in the upper Midwest here, and they have the Port of Grace Harbor facility export terminal in Aberdeen, Washington, and we've connected that logistic value chain between the farmers, the grain elevators, the co-op processors, the export terminal, all the way to the buyers, and we link that together. And it's important to build those relationships because in Asia, relationships matter.
Did you get that sense in meeting with those purchasers in the Philippines that they really do appreciate the value and just how high quality of a bean the United States produces?
Yeah, they really like to visit with the farmers. They like to hear how we grow the soybeans, the care we take. They value the high quality products that we provide. They see it in their feed values and their feed conversions that there is a benefit to feeding U.S. soybean meal. They see better rate of gain. They value the consistency of the soybean meal that comes out of the U.S. They think it's higher quality, and they're willing to pay a premium for it, which not every market is, in a commodity-based market, is willing to do that, but they will do that. Very loyal customer to the U.S. We have over 82% market share, and that didn't happen overnight. That's been something that's been a part of this marketing process with the farmers, the processor, and our buyers over the last 15 to 20 years.
And is that then the number one export destination for our soybean meal?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes Mexico is. They kind of go back and forth, but certainly the Philippines, number one or number two market for our U.S. soybean meal. And of course, we have a long-standing relationship. For those there that are history buffs, know that the U.S. had a lot of relationships there in World War II. Of course, we were there. Had to leave and then came back into the island and liberated it and so forth. And so they have a democratic system, very more similar to ours. So in a way, they're very more of a westernized country in the Far East and the Southeast Asia region. So there's a strong connection between the U.S. and the Philippines from all those different reasons.
And they were hit pretty hard by ASF, African swine fever. Are they trying to build that industry back up then? And that's also part of why we want to see this continue to grow in terms of soybean meal? Yeah,
they've been battling that for several years now, and it's still been a problem. And in the Philippines, you have a lot of smaller farmers, and so the biosecurity process is very difficult. They're hopeful that maybe over time we'll see a viable vaccine developed. I know there's one, I think, through USDA research that's being tested in Vietnam and other places that they're hopeful that can come over and be successful. So they're trying to build their hog herd back up a little bit, but it's a process and it takes a little bit of time.
So still trying to build that Philippines market. Let's talk about another country that was on the trip, South Korea, which is also a very important market, but it's a much more mature market at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, South Korea, Japan, what we kind of term as a Northeast Asia region, that's more of a mature market region. Very important. They value U.S. soy as well, but different kind of market. So in South Korea, we're talking some more food bean opportunities, non-GMO and GMO, but more for food grade, food bean quality soybeans that go there, soybean oil. They'd buy some soybean meal too. So maybe a little more balanced market in different areas. Not quite as high a market share for U.S. product there, but there is still, it's a big sizable market and a market also that has a strong relationship with the United States.
How does the average purchaser or soybean consumer in South Korea view the United States when it comes to the sustainability efforts that go into growing soybeans here in this country?
Yeah, being that it's a bit more of a developed market, sustainability does play a factor there, and they like to make sure that the commodities and the food that they're sourcing from around the world is sustainably produced, and that's something we can do as a U.S. soybean industry. We collaboratively have validated and gone through the scientific processes to certify that U.S. soy is sustainably produced. There's a program we call the U.S. Soy Sustainability Assurance Protocol, SSAP for short, where we can provide these sustainability certificates that then goes with the shipment, and the buyers can then use those certificates and pass that down along to the value chain and their customer base who value that, and that just all comes together in the marketing system.
So Grant, at the end of the day, when you come home from a trip like this, what are you telling Iowa's soybean growers to be thinking about when they're thinking about the ways that these relationships are built, getting soybeans to these end destinations, and again, at the end of the day, trying to grow some of these markets?
Yeah, as I said, with the Sustainability Assurance Protocol, about 70% of U.S. soy exports now carry that certificate with it, buyers requesting that. So it's very important, and as farmers, we want to continue to make improvements in our production practices, and we all do that continually to improve and the things and tell our story, because we are doing the right things. We're adopting more no-till technology, cover crops, those kinds of things. We're producing more with less inputs. Those all matter. And then building these relationships. When we get the chance to visit with these buyers, tell them how we grow our soybeans, tell them the story, and tell them we're here to be a major partner with them, not just a supplier, but also their partners to help grow their business. Because if they grow their business, that grows our business opportunities for us.
He is Grant Kimberley with the Iowa Soybean Association for Between the Pods here today. Grant, thanks so much for taking the time to tell us about your trade trip that you were on, and best of luck the rest of the year as we head into 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you to Grant Kimberley of the Iowa Soybean Association for joining today's episode of Between the Pods here on AM/PM. It is time now for our closing markets, but that's coming up after a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. You're watching Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
You're watching Ag Matters PM, and it is closing markets now with Cory Bratland of agmarket.net. And Cory, not a pretty day in the grain markets yesterday. Did we bounce back at all today?
Yeah, we sure did, Mark. Corn market is going to end up the day about 3.5 or so higher on the March contract, and that's been kind of the leader. We've been seeing the bull spreads work where that March contract not being sold off quite as hard as the deferreds, and also when we do rally, March future has been rallying a little bit stronger. So we saw March corn up about 3.5 here on the day. The beans, January beans, going to end up about 10, 11 higher with March and the May contracts up probably 13 to 14 cents. So we're starting to see maybe a little bit of the bull spreads working back. So overall, soybeans, had that big technical kind of sell off yesterday. We broke January contract support at 973, and that brought in a lot more selling. We're starting to seeing some funds add to their short position. And we just had a hard time recovering, and with that, was kind of brought on by a little bit better weather down in Argentina. They got a little bit more moisture than what was expected, and right now the next couple of weeks sure looks good for moisture for Brazil and Argentina. So we get another 2 weeks of good weather. That gets us after the first of the year. That's going to get them closer to starting harvest. So all systems go, and that looks like they got a heck of a big crop coming. So in our window of them having a issue of smaller crop is getting smaller and smaller here for us. So overall, though, we had a nice little bounce back today, which is pretty typical after a big sell-off. And corn market in here has just been more of a follower, Mark, just looking for a little guidance from between the wheat and the beans. But overall, corn seems to have pretty good support with strong demand here recently.
So like you said, at the very least, nice to see a little bit of a bounce back here today in the grains. Now let's talk about the livestock complex. How did cattle and hogs trade today?
Down again. We saw feeder cattle on the live cattle were down anywhere from about $1.25 to $1.75. We're hearing a lot of news about bird flu, especially in California, and that's really starting to run wild. We're seeing more and more. We're kind of hearing that maybe it's a little bit worse out there than what we were first led on to believe. Feeder cattle down $2.50 to $3 overall, kind of across the board again there. And what you got here, you got the funds carrying near record long positions in both the feeder cattle and the live cattle. So headlines like that do kind of mess with the market a little bit. Overall, hogs on the day were spent most of the day higher. They closed down just a little bit, but they seem to be kind of consolidating in here, getting ready to maybe move back higher here a little bit. So we've got cattle and feed report out tomorrow, and I think the hog and pig report comes out on Monday.
It will be interesting to see, Cory, because recently when we've had some negative bird flu headlines, we've been able to shake those off fairly quickly. I guess now it's just a case of seeing whether there's some follow through on this.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. I think we're trading headlines. I think in the big picture, we're going to look back at this and look at it as probably an opportunity to get some call options bought in here overall. But I think in the big picture, we still got tight supply. We got strong demand. I think it's just these funds. We're getting towards the end of December and the end of the year with the funds carrying these large positions near record in both feeder cattle and live cattle. They're just lightening up some of these positions and just going to shore up their positions before we get to the end of the year.
So, Cory, if our listeners, our viewers have any questions about the things we've talked about today or want to get any more marketing advice, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you and get in touch with agmarket.net?
You bet. You can head on over to our website at agmarket.net, or else you can reach out to our toll-free number here and talk to any of our brokers. Our toll-free number is 844-424-6758.
Cory Bratland of agmarket.net, my guest here today. Cory, thank you for the time. Always appreciate it, and have a great rest of your week.
You bet. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you to Cory Bratland of agmarket.net for our closing markets here today. Let's take a look at how the numbers closed in the ag marketplace, and you can find those numbers anytime under the markets tab at iowaagnet.com. March corn closes up 3.5 at 440 3/4. January soybeans up 11 1/4 at 963 even. January soybean meal up 460 at 284.10. January soybean oil up 46 cents at 40.01. Chicago wheat down 8 1/4 at 533 even. Minneapolis wheat down 5 cents at 587. Kansas City hard red wheat down 5.5 at 543 1/4. March oats down 3 3/4 at 355 3/4. On the Merc, February live cattle down $1.77 at 186.55. January feeder cattle down 252 at 254.47. February lean hogs down 7 cents at 83.62. February pork cutout unchanged at 92.47. Class 3 milk down 62 cents at 19.55. That wraps up our closing markets for today, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media at Facebook, X, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't forget as well to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the notification icon as well. You can also listen to our daily Iowa Ag Matters podcast, as well as our morning, midday, and closing market podcast. And you can find those at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Dustin Huffman, Riley Smith, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.